In a world where political agendas and power trumps logic and reason, one superpower and one war-torn country unite to maintain a dictatorship. I'm Fred Melamed, and I will take you on a journey through the Nicaraguan Revolution. It all started with the right-wing dictatorship led autocratically by the infamous Somoza regime. They had been in power since an earlier civil war in the 1920s and 30s. Starting in the late 1970s, the Somoza regime was challenged by the Sandinista National Liberation Front, or FSLN, or Sandinistas. The first guerrilla attacks by the Sandinistas happened in 1978, and these violent attacks continued until they emerged victorious on July 19, 1979. The Sandinistas supported a Republican form of government, and they had communist economic beliefs. The US, under President Jimmy Carter, was somewhat lenient towards communism, but once Reagan was sworn in, the US government focused on the removal of communism, especially in nearby Central America. The US backed right-wing rebels known as Contras. In order to help them towards victory, Reagan cut off economic aid to the Sandinista government and provided the rebels with weapons. Though the Reagan administration did not send the army to help, the CIA was largely important in organizing rebel forces. Throughout the rebellion, the Sandinistas had grown more controlling over the industry of Nicaragua, without forming a democracy that they had promised. They were forced to increase spending money on its military, until military spending swelled to half the entire budget. Also, they implemented a compulsory military draft. Eventually, the Sandinista government formed a fledgling democracy, hence virtually ending the bloodshed in 1985. 2 years later, many of the leaders of the Central American governments met at a summit in Guatemala to discuss peace terms to end the many conflicts, not just in Nicaragua, but across the region. Nicaragua's president attended this meeting. Back in Nicaragua, the majority of Nicaraguans grew fed up with the failed Sandinista government led by Daniel Ortega. Pressure mounted for a real democracy, and in 1990, Ortega complied and called for free elections. In response, a coalition of all other parties, including minority communists, formed a coalition called the UNO, or National Opposition Union. This coalition's presidential nominee, Violeta Chamorro, won the election against Ortega. This signaled the end of the Nicaraguan Revolution. Soon after the election of 1990, the UNO coalition began to falter on the progress of proper democracy and rightist economic policies. The coalition officially split in the mid-1990s as Nicaragua's economy halted, and they remained one of the poorest in the Western Hemisphere. Eventually, things came full circle, and Daniel Ortega was re-elected president in 2006. Shortly after, tensions rose between the US and Nicaragua, and the US once again revoked economic aid in 2011 due to the controversial elections in Nicaragua and their lack of fiscal transparency. Currently, although several leaders, including Mr. Ortega, see America as terrible imperialists, the capitalistic nature, as well as perceived liberal values on aid, immigration, and investments attract the masses in both Nicaragua and across Latin America. Hopefully, our relationship with the government can improve so that we can help them grow their economy in order to grow more economically independent. Until next time, I'm Fred Melamed, signing off.